Welcome. In the land of Moab, Ruth, a foreign woman from Moab, married into one of Israel's families, the family of Elimelech. Then tragedy struck that family. Elimelech's 2 sons, including Ruth's husband, died in Moab. And the result was that Ruth was left with her mother-in-law, Naomi. Naomi chose to come back to Israel, and Ruth came with her to Bethlehem. And we're now in the strange situation where Ruth, this foreign woman, alone is able to rescue Elimelech's family. She can do that by the ancient law in Deuteronomy 25 verses 5 to 10, which gives her the right to marry Elimelech's nearest living relative. And she's found that man. His name is Boaz. He is a hero of Israel, a great man and a man of property who lives in Bethlehem. But is it possible to arrange for him to marry Ruth, a foreigner? Well, we're looking today at Ruth chapter 3. My name is Keith Simons. I'm a Bible teacher from England, presenting these talks on how to understand the King James Bible, looking at each time at one chapter, verse by verse and word by word, seeking to understand its meaning. So please turn with me to Ruth chapter 3, and we begin, of course, with the first verse. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said unto her, My daughter, shall I not seek rest for thee, that it may be well with thee? Seek rest. It's Naomi's way of saying, I want you, Ruth, to marry. I'm going to try and find you a husband. You're looking after me in this foreign country. Foreign to Ruth, of course, not to Naomi. This is the country in which Naomi was born. But in this country which seems foreign to you, you're looking after me, Naomi. And yet, you're still a young woman. You're still young enough to remarry. And if you remarry, you can rescue this family of which only these 2 widows survive. Naomi has the right plan, but the wrong method. She realizes about God's law that Ruth can marry that nearest relative, and so the family of Elimelech can continue. And how wonderful that it can continue to the future. It can continue. It might even become Israel's royal family. Of course, that's exactly what happened. This was what God was providing in his plans for Israel's people. Naomi had the right plan, but the wrong method. Notice how tenderly Naomi speaks to Ruth. She calls her my daughter. She truly cares for Ruth, and she has a plan for Ruth. Verse 2. And now is not Boaz of our kindred, with whose maidens thou wast? Maidens is an old-fashioned word for girls and young women. Ruth was with them when she worked on Boaz's fields, gleaning or taking the grain that has been left over by the harvesters. And Naomi is saying, you were in the field of Boaz, and Boaz is of our kindred. He's a relative of Naomi's husband who died. Behold, says Naomi, he winnoweth barley tonight in the threshing floor. To winnow, it means to take the grain and to throw it up in the air because the wind will blow away from it the little bits of chaff and of straw that are mixed with it. It's just part of the process to prepare the grain for storage. before that winnowing can take place, Boaz has to take oxen, strong young animals from the family, or same family as cows, but smaller than cows. And these strong bulls will pull a heavy board over the grain to break it up so that the seeds are separated from the straw and from the chaff. But to harvest it and to get it clean, this process of winnowing has to take place. And Boaz has to take a shovel full of grain after shovel full of grain and throw it up in the wind. He does it in the threshing floor, a flat piece of ground. It had to be flat, because if it was not a large flat area, all this of driving oxen over the grain wouldn't manage to clean it out, wouldn't manage to separate it. So this is a yard which has been made purposefully flat for that purpose. And all this grain which has been harvested has been piled up on the threshing floor until the night or the time when Boaz, as its owner, can winnow it. Verse 3, Naomi says, "Wash thyself therefore, and anoint thee, and put thy raiment upon thee, and get thee down to the floor." What's she saying? She's saying, prepare yourself. Prepare yourself as a bride does for her marriage, because I want you to have a marriage with Boaz, and I want it to be tonight. So she's to wash, of course, and anoint herself. In other words, pour on oils, pour on perfumes, get herself beautiful, to wear her raiment, her dress, her best clothes. She must look like a bride this night, because Naomi's plan is for a secret wedding between Boaz and Ruth. She says, "But make not thyself known unto the man until he shall have done eating and drinking." What? Boaz is to know nothing about this plan for his wedding? Why? Because Ruth is a foreigner. And Naomi thinks to herself, if Boaz realizes that it's a foreign woman, he's not going to agree to this. He's certainly not wanting people to know that he's married a foreigner. So Ruth, in this plan, has to turn up secretly. And then, if Boaz consents to it, they will have their marriage. But it's not merely a case of turning up at the threshing floor and requesting a marriage. No, the marriage has to be requested in Naomi's plan in the middle of the night. Verse 4, "And it shall be, when he lieth down, that thou shalt mark the place where he shall lie." Look for the place where he lies down. The principle here is that Boaz has to guard his grain that night. It's out on the threshing floor. Any thief could come and steal it. No, he will take his weapons, and he will, when he's eaten and drunk, he will lie down on the threshing floor. And his men will too, in different places, so that if someone wakes one of them, they can all get up and they can fight the robbers for their grain. Mark the place where he shall lie. Make sure, Ruth, that you know exactly where Boaz is lying, because it will be truly terrible if you go to the wrong man. "And thou shalt go in," this is after he's fallen asleep, "and uncover his feet and lay thee down." Why does Naomi tell Ruth to uncover his feet? Because when Boaz wakes, they want Boaz to look down and to see Ruth, because Ruth is going to be lying at the feet of Boaz. And when he wakes, he will tell thee what thou shalt do. You're going to have to follow Boaz's instructions from there. I can't tell you what to do then, says Naomi, but Boaz will tell you whether he accepts you as his wife. And she, that's Ruth, said unto her, to Naomi, all that thou sayest unto me, I will do. In Ruth we see such trust and such innocence. She is a new convert to Judaism. She's only just decided that she belongs to Israel's people and to Israel's God. She doesn't have people to instruct her and direct her into how to live for God. Only Naomi. And Naomi has this plan which she's urged on Ruth because it is Ruth's right to marry Boaz. But will it work? Let's just think about the dangers of this plan. It was unsafe for a woman to be outside at night in a city. The only women who usually went out of their houses by night were prostitutes. But Ruth is going to be outside, out of the city, away from Bethlehem, where there are robbers all around. That's why Boaz is lying down in the field, or rather on the threshing floor. He's lying there because he fears the robbers. What would they do with a young woman who they caught in a country that has no proper legal system? And then Boaz himself might take advantage of Ruth. Remember, the whole purpose of this is so that Ruth can stay with Boaz and have a child by Boaz. Yet Ruth trusts Naomi's advice, and she goes to carry this out. Verse 6, and she went down unto the floor, that's the threshing floor where the grain is to be prepared, and did according to all that her mother-in-law bade her. All that Naomi had bade or urged her to do, she did. Verse 7, and when Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of corn. And she came softly and uncovered his feet and laid her down. So Boaz has had his meal. He's worked hard that day. It's tough to control oxen. It's heavy work to be winnowing or tossing the grain into the air to separate it. And now he's tired. And he goes to lie down. He selects his place, the closest place to the heap of corn, the grain that he's prepared. And she sees he's fallen asleep. So Ruth comes up to him softly, uncovers his feet, exactly the instruction her mother-in-law gave her, and lays down. And then we have a pause as Ruth anxiously waits to see what will happen. And nothing until midnight. Verse 8, and it came to pass, it happened, that expression means, it came to pass at midnight that the man was afraid and turned himself, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. The man was afraid. And in the Jewish writings, they emphasize the fact that he was afraid. It wasn't just that he thought maybe a robber had come to attack the grain. No, something worse had happened. Something disturbed him so badly. What disturbed him so badly? Maybe temptation. Maybe the temptation to see that a woman was lying at his feet and there was nothing to restrain his actions. He was afraid that he might break God's law, might do something wrongly against that woman. But he restrains himself. He turns, he examines the situation, and then he asks a question. Verse 9, and he said, who art thou? And she answered, I'm Ruth, thine handmaid. Who art thou? It's midnight. It's dark. He cannot recognize the woman. He hasn't actually been very close to Ruth. Ruth has stayed at a distance from him, faithfully working each day in his field, but staying with the young women. He doesn't recognize Ruth, but she explains, I am Ruth, thine handmaid. A handmaid really means a servant. She doesn't claim to be the great person who's entitled to be his wife. She just describes herself as a handmaid. Spread therefore thy skirt over thine handmaid, for thou art a near kinsman. His skirt. Well, of course, in those days and for most of history, men have worn long robes that are like a dress, we would say today. And of course, in many parts of the world, such clothes are frequently worn by men even today. Boaz was properly dressed to sleep. Everyone dressed properly to sleep in those days, but especially outside, when the nights can be cold. Boaz is wearing his coat over him. It's a long coat. It's so long that when he's lying down, it's even covering his feet. But of course, Ruth has moved it aside from over his feet, so his feet are bare. But Ruth says, spread therefore thy skirt over thine handmaid. What's she asking for? She's asking to come under his covering. That's a picture of marriage. If Boaz does that, if Boaz takes his coat and places it over Ruth, well, that's like ancient times, when the way in which a man married a woman was to take her into the tent. And he would take her into his tent, and so she would become his wife. That's how Isaac married Rebekah. He took her into the tent. And so there's no tent there, they're in the open air. But Ruth says, doesn't matter. All you've got to do is to spread the edge of your coat over me, and that will be a marriage. And why is he to do such a thing? For thou art a near kinsman. Because Ruth knows this law, this ancient law, that the nearest relative has the duty to marry the widow and the family to continue by that means. It was ancient even at the time of Ruth. It had been there for a few hundred years since the time of Moses. And it seems that many people in Israel neglected this law or didn't care about it. But Ruth knows that Boaz serves God, and he will care about this. When we look at Boaz in this passage, we see a man with a sincere desire to help his family, but until this moment, he's been slow to commit, slow to make that decision. He heard long ago about the relationship between him and Ruth, but he did nothing about it. He's hesitated. We're about to find one reason why he hesitated. But in the minds of Ruth and Naomi, he's only hesitated because he's nervous to go ahead with that final step of marrying Ruth. And Naomi and Ruth are hoping that this taking of the initiative, this bold step by Ruth, can at last draw attention to Boaz as to what God's law says about this thing and the need for him to marry and so to rescue the family. On to verse 10. And he said, Blessed be thou of the Lord, my daughter, for thou hast shewed more kindness in the latter end than at the beginning. What does he mean? She's shown more kindness now than she did before? More kindness to come to him in the middle of the night and to request marriage? What's going on? Inasmuch as thou followedst not young men, whether poor or rich. Boaz is saying you could have married someone else. You could have found a poor man working in my field, and he would have married you. Or you could have found a rich man, and he might have married you. But you waited. You waited because you wanted to do what God wanted. You knew about this ancient law that a man should marry the widow of his relative. And you cared. You cared not just for Naomi as a widow in her need, but you cared about me. You were waiting for your opportunity to ask me to marry you. Now, it's true it would have been much wiser if at the outset of this, instead of this silly plan to meet in the middle of the night, Naomi had sent a message to Boaz, or maybe, if the customs of the day allowed it, gone to see him and discuss the matter. But Boaz, realizing the situation and realizing their mistake, doesn't hold that against Ruth. Rather, he announces God's blessing upon her because she's done this great and wonderful thing. She's waited for Boaz. She's waited for him. Verse 11, and now, my daughter, fear not. I will do to thee all that thou requirest. For all the city of my people doth know that thou art a virtuous woman, a good woman, a kind woman, a woman who behaves properly and hasn't been tempted to have an affair with another man. Don't be afraid. I will look after you. I will make sure you get that marriage. Notice his reference to all the city of my people. A funny way to describe Bethlehem. The note in the margin of the King James, some King James versions have a marginal note there, and they suggest all the gate of my people. Bethlehem is described as a city not because of its size, but because it's a walled city with gates. And the cities in Israel in the time of the Bible were not generally large. They were generally very small. We might only consider them villages today, but they had that defensive wall around them, and that's what made a city as opposed to a town or a village in the Bible. But why was it that Boaz hesitated to marry Ruth? Verse 12, and now it is true that I am thy near kinsman, howbeit there is a kinsman nearer than I. Oh dear. Naomi has missed this. Ruth has missed this too. Yes, Boaz is a relative, but there is another relative with a better right to marry Ruth, whose relationship to Naomi and to Ruth is closer than Boaz's is. That needs to be sorted out, because Boaz is not going to agree to a secret marriage in the middle of the night. He's not going to agree to some sort of affair so that he can have Ruth and have a child by her. No, he wants this done properly and done well, and he is going to deal with this situation and sort it out. Verse 13, tarry this night. Stay here tonight. It's too dangerous for you to go back. And it shall be in the morning that if he will perform unto thee the part of a kinsman, well, it's good. If he's willing, this other nearer relative, to marry Ruth. But what if not? If he will do it, well, let him do the kinsman's part. But if he will not do the part of a kinsman to thee, then will I do the part of a kinsman to thee. In other words, I'm going to carry this out. I'm going to carry it out if that nearest relative fails. Be sure tomorrow, Ruth, you will have your marriage, and it will be to a relative of your deceased husband, just as you wished. I don't know whether it will be me or him, but one of us will do it. And then he makes a promise, an oath in the name of God, as the Lord liveth. He promises Ruth in the name of the Lord, as God is his witness, he will do it. He will ensure that Ruth gets that marriage. So lie down until the morning. It's too early for you to leave here. Verse 14, and she lay at his feet until the morning, and she rose up before one could know another. And he said, let it not be known that a woman came into the floor. So she's rising up early, just before dawn, so that people will not realize what happens. He's not wanting any stories to spread about Ruth, anything to be said that would accuse her of doing something that was wrong, that was faulty. And then he adds something to it before he sends her back to Naomi. Verse 15, also he said, bring the veil that thou hast upon thee and hold it. The veil, the Hebrew word really means a wide cloak. A veil today means the covering a woman has for her face, but this is her cloak. Hold it, in other words, hold it out. And when she held it, he measured 6 measures of barley and laid it on her, and she went into the city. How odd, 6 of barley. He counts out 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They already have plenty of grain. Ruth has been harvesting for several weeks on his harvest field. Why this strange gift? And why 6 measures of barley? Verse 16. And when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, who art thou, my daughter? Do you sense some shock in Naomi's words there? Who art thou, my daughter? She knows who it is. Why does she say, who art thou? Because Naomi is not expecting Ruth to return. If Boaz had accepted her, then she would have remained with Boaz, surely. They've just got married. But if Boaz had mistreated her, or if she'd been attacked on the way, then her clothes would have been torn, and she would have been weeping and in deep distress. Naomi cannot understand this. Who art thou? Are you Boaz's wife? Has something else happened? Has something terrible happened to you? And Ruth replies, and she told her all that the man had done to her. And she said, these 6 measures of barley gave he me, for he said to me, go not empty unto thy mother-in-law. So this barley was a gift for Naomi. Well, it was the only gift that Boaz had available on the threshing floor, barley. But why 6 measures? There's a tradition at the time of puzzles at weddings. Samson's marriage happened in the same period of time when the judges ruled. Judges 14:12-8 tells of the puzzle that he told at the wedding. This looks like a puzzle. Why 6 measures? Well, there's 6 days in the week, and that matters to Israel's people because the 7th day is a day of rest. And how did Naomi describe marriage? Verse 1, rest. Yes, Ruth's time of working has come to an end. Tomorrow is going to be the day of rest, the day of marriage for Ruth. And Naomi seems to understand this, because verse 18, she says, then said she, sit still, my daughter, until thou know how the matter will fall, for the man will not be in rest until he have finished the thing this day. No rest for Boaz. You'll get a rest. You can sit still. You've been up all night. But now he's he's going to have to work. He's going to have to arrange things, because this is Boaz's wedding day, if only he can arrange it. Boaz has rejected this secret marriage plan. Why? Because he wants to follow God's law, and he's not ashamed to follow God's law, even though Ruth, whom he must marry, is a foreigner. He knows Ruth is a suitable bride for him. He knows that if he marries her, he can do this wonderful thing of rescuing this family which almost seemed to disappear. And he doesn't want it secret. He wants a whole town to be the witnesses of this marriage. He wants it to be a proper marriage, because who knows what this family might become in the future. It could even become Israel's royal family. It could even be the family into which the Messiah is to be born. So I hope you're excited to discover what will happen in our next talk, when we look at the last chapter of the book of Ruth. But I'm about to read you the whole of Ruth chapter 3, our chapter for today. Before I do so, my email address, it will be wonderful to hear from you, 333kjv@gmail.com. Please let me know which country you're from, and if you're in the United States, which of the states. 333kjv@gmail.com. And now let me read you the whole of Ruth chapter 3 from the King James Bible. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said unto her, My daughter, shall I not seek rest for thee, that it may be well with thee? And now is not Boaz of our kindred, with whose maidens thou wast? Behold, he winnoweth barley tonight in the threshing floor. Wash thyself therefore, and anoint thee, and put thy raiment upon thee, and get thee down to the floor. But make not thyself known unto the man until he shall have done eating and drinking. And it shall be, when he lieth down, that thou shalt mark the place where he shall lie. And thou shalt go in, and uncover his feet, and lay thee down, and he will tell thee what thou shalt do. And she said unto her, All that thou sayest unto me, I will do. And she went down to the floor, and did according to all that her mother-in-law bade her. And when Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was merry, he went to lie down. He went to lie down at the end of the heap of corn, and she came softly, and uncovered his feet, and laid her down. And it came to pass at midnight that the man was afraid, and turned himself, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. And he said, Who art thou? And she answered, I am Ruth, thine handmaid. Spread therefore thy skirt over thine handmaid, for thou art a near kinsman. And he said, Blessed be thou of the Lord, my daughter, for thou hast shewed more kindness in the latter end than at the beginning, inasmuch as thou followedst not young men, whether poor or rich. And now, my daughter, fear not. I will do to thee all that thou requirest, for all the city of my people doth know that thou art a virtuous woman. And now it is true that I am thy near kinsman, howbeit there is a kinsman nearer than I. Tarry this night, and it shall be in the morning that if he will perform unto thee the part of a kinsman, well, let him do the kinsman's part. But if he will not do the part of a kinsman to thee, then will I do the part of a kinsman to thee, as the Lord liveth. Lie down until the morning. And she lay at his feet until the morning, and she rose up before one could know another, And he said, Let it not be known that a woman came into the floor. Also he said, Bring the veil that thou hast upon thee, and hold it. And when she held it, he measured 6 measures of barley, and laid it on her, and she went into the city. And when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, Who art thou, my daughter? And she told her all that the man had done to her. And she said, These 6 measures of barley gave he me, for he said to me, Go not empty unto thy mother-in-law. Then said she, Sit still, my daughter, until thou know how the matter will fall, for the man will not be in rest until he have finished the thing this day.